I'd like to come back and say more about the Ten Commandments. Again, the Ten Commandments, or the Decalogue, gives a summary statement of what God expects of people in covenant relationship with Him, giving minimal standards, not the ideal. Two versions, one in Exodus 20 and a parallel version in Deuteronomy 5, 40 years later, where the Ten Commandments are reviewed for a new generation. And the Josephus ordering of the Ten Commandments divides them, as you see in the chart, with 4 laws pertaining to God and 6 laws pertaining to human beings. One debated issue is whether or not it's should be 10 commandments or 10 words. The word Decalogue technically means not 10 commandments, but 10 words. And it's what Protestant Bibles tend to render as 10 commandments in Exodus 34:28 and Deuteronomy 4:13 and Deuteronomy 10 verse 4. Literally, the Hebrew there says the 10 words. Jews, however, have understood this unit to be the Decalogue, the 10 words, and not all the words are commandments in their reckoning. So let's look at the Jewish ordering of the 10 commandments. In the Jewish ordering, you start off with a prologue. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery, followed by a command against idolatry, no other gods and no images of gods, followed by don't take God's name in vain, followed by the Sabbath. The rest are like the Josephus ordering. It combines the commandment against no other God and the commandment against images into one command against idolatry. And it makes the Decalogue 10 words, which is basically one statement and 9 commandments. And this on the surface seems a little odd. Why not have 10 commands rather than the one word is different than the other word? That makes it a little odd. Roman Catholics count the 10 commandments differently too. They start off with no other gods before me, and they also, like the Jewish tradition, combine that with don't make images as one command against idolatry. But they end up with 10 commands by taking the 9th command against coveting and breaking it up into 2. Don't covet your neighbor's house. Don't covet anything else that belongs to your neighbor. So, like the Jewish ordering, the Catholic ordering combines the law against other gods and one prohibiting images into one law instead of 2 in the Josephus ordering. And they maintain 10, however, by taking that last command on coveting and dividing it into 2. There are problems with this view, however. Dividing the 10th command into 2 seems a bit arbitrary. Moreover, in Deuteronomy's version of the 10 Commandments, it begins not with coveting one's neighbor's house, but with coveting your neighbor's wife. And thus, Deuteronomy does not divide up the law along the Catholic interpretation lines. So it's better to take it as one command against coveting and not 2 commands. There you can see the difference between Exodus version and Deuteronomy's version of this same law. Now, one reason why Catholics dislike the Josephus ordering and interpretation is since in Catholic worship they use images of the true God, images of Jesus, and in some cases even images representing God the Father and God the Holy Spirit in their icons for worship. Well, the Josephus ordering and interpretation would seem to imply that the image against the command against other gods and the command against images are not exactly the same command against idolatry, but that the command against images would include images of Yahweh or of the true God. Protestants historically have considered all the Catholic icons a violation of this second commandment. And that would find support in Exodus 32, the golden calf story. It turns out that the best interpretation of the golden calf story is that it is not an image of a pagan god. The golden calf is an image of Yahweh. In other words, the Israelites were violating not the first commandment, no other god before me, but the second commandment, you're not to make an image of anything in heaven above or earth below, and so on and so forth. Let me elaborate on that. Some confusion comes in the way translations have chosen to translate Exodus 32 and verse 4. The NIV follows an interpretation that takes the word Elohim, which is either God capital G or God's little g, as referring to gods. And so they bring out the golden calf and they say, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you forth out of Egypt." However, there is another interpretation followed by the New American Standard Bible. "This is your God, singular, O Israel, who brought you from the land of Egypt." I submit to you that the New American Standard rendering is superior here. There's only one golden calf, and that implies one God, one image, one God. Moreover, the line, "This is your God who brought you forth out of Egypt," implies that the calf represents Yahweh, because all the Israelites knew it was Yahweh who had brought them out of Egypt. And as soon as they finish making the calf, Aaron declares a feast to Yahweh. Well, why would you declare a feast to Yahweh if the calf represents some other god? And the answer is no, it doesn't represent another god. It represents Yahweh. So in our view, both the Catholic and Jewish orderings of the Ten Commandments wrongly combine the command against other gods and the command against images. The golden calf in Exodus 32 violates the second command, but it does not violate the first, and it implies that Josephus got it right in his ordering of the Ten Commandments. A few brief comments on each of the Ten Commandments. "You shall have no other gods before me." Basic meaning of that would be in the tabernacle, don't have any other images of other gods. Now, the underlying principle behind that is don't let anything replace what God's place should be in your life. But it was probably initially interpreted very concretely. Now, Israelite religion was not particularly tolerant. Polytheists can acknowledge a God without denying the gods of other peoples. But Israel was to give no place to other gods. And this first command brings Israel to the point of monotheism. Technically, it doesn't deny that other gods might exist, but for Israel, they were not to worship them whether or not they existed. This is called henotheism, that idea. Second command against images it's affirmed that this applies also to Yahweh by Deuteronomy chapter 4, where it says that you saw no form or any kind of you did not see any form of any kind on the day that the Lord spoke to you out of Horeb, out of the fire. This is Mount Sinai when they were getting the Ten Commandments. "Therefore watch yourselves very carefully so that you do not become corrupt and make for yourself an idol, an image of anything of any shape, whether formed like a man or a woman, like any animal on earth or any bird that flies in the air, or like any creature that moves along the ground or any fish in the waters below." When God revealed himself to you, in other words, he didn't show any visible form of himself so that you would not be tempted to make images of him. Why? Images misrepresent God. God may be strong like the bull of the golden calf, but he wasn't dumb as an ox. Images could be used to promote magical practices, kind of like voodoo dolls. You could manipulate the image to try to get what you want from the god. Images could also degenerate into polytheism. You got two images of the same god, one like a man, one like some sort of animal. Well, after a while, people think of that as two different gods. God says, don't do this because the Lord your God is a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers onto the children to the third and fourth generation. Now you might wonder, well, why does God portray himself as jealous? Isn't jealousy a sin? Well, there's a sinful jealousy, which is envy, but there's another kind of jealousy which is not, and that is being zealous to maintain that which is rightly yours. The way that a husband might be zealous to maintain a relationship with his wife and be intent on not allowing any man to encroach upon that relationship. So just as it's not wrong for a husband to be jealous of his wife when another man inappropriately advances on her, so God is jealous in the sense that he's zealous to maintain his relationship, proper relationship with his people.